Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to our 19th webinar. This is the 19th webinar organized by the India Expo Mart and Center Limited, IEML, whose chairman, Mr. Rakesh Kumar, is with us. And we are very privileged to do this webinar with another mega organization. It's a 77-year-old organization, the All India Food Processors Association, IFPA. And we have Mr. Subodh Jindal, who's the president of IFPA, uh, among us. So it's a matter of great honor to be in such distinguished company. As you know, these webinars are being done in the run-up to the India International Hospitality Expo 2020, which is being held from December 2nd to December 5th of this year. And we can claim with certain amount of pride and a sense of achievement that this is the biggest hospitality show in the country. Without wasting many words, I invite Mr. Jindal to set the ball rolling, and then Mr. Rakesh Kumar will formally welcome all of us.
Thank you, Mr. Bhattacharya. Learned speakers, dear participants, a very good evening to everyone. It's a pleasure for me to share this discussion session with all of you. This webinar addresses a very important subject. And what is more befitting is that it has been organized by the best export promotion platform, IEML, in the country, which is set up with the great initiative of Shri Rakesh Kumarji and is working under guidance. I have had the privilege of interaction with him for a long time, and I can easily call him as a veteran in energizing the global trade from India. You know, physically getting companies from across the board to exhibit and organizing such a vast area of the exhibition display is a very rare and difficult thing. And then to think of getting all the concerned ministries and the global players together. This webinar today, we have eminent and experienced industry captains from a wide product segment who will enlighten us on the status and the future of food processing industry, particularly in reference to the export potential and the steps required at the industry level and at the government policy level to mobilize it. As an emerging economy, with a vast agri-resource and a huge talent pool, India can become an important global player in the sector. Presently, the COVID epidemic has disturbed production systems, and it may take some time for operations to re-establish to their fullest. However, this is the right time when we should study the variables and the source demand equations and initiate ground level interactions with the overseas entities to set up relationships. It may look difficult at the moment, but probably this is the time when we should actually try and find out who the other parties are. New products, innovation formulations, and in there we have to focus on health food products because that's where the world is today looking and focusing on. And then we have to be very careful that a lot of steps need to be taken up, which will include requirement of infrastructure, machine technologies, selecting the right materials and growing processable varieties. And India is home to, by heritage, to a host of nutrition ingredients and products. We need to leverage the same. Our R&D exercise, efficient logistics, which has a lot of to do with the government. Then rationalization of certain taxes, reducing the cost of utilities, particularly energy, power cost, fixed cost, is very important and is a very important component for the success of this sector. Then there are concerns on liquidity and blockage of finances owing to the seasonal nature of our product and our materials. And the replenishment cycles for finance in the agro sector are long. Now, looking at all these things, I think in this context, it is interesting that one of the challenges by COVID-19 is that the world order is changing today. There will be reworking of trade equations, and one country's present stronghold may be taken by another. Maybe, as an example, China has a stronghold on export of tomato paste, but likely there will be a change. And Indian businesses have a possibility of sharing some of that. A large number of foreign companies are looking for relocating their production base and looking for alternative places. Here again, we can play a good role if we can attract these companies. But for this to happen, a number of important decisions and actions will have to be taken up by the businesses and with the government. So I think this is the background in which today we have assembled, and we would like to share our ideas on the status of the sector and what steps we need to take at our level and at the government level, so that we can, as we all know, the panelists today are very, very experienced and learned people. They have long pitches in their segments, in their companies and product sectors. And besides the mix of the product sectors, they also have vast experience in different types of industry, corporate sector, multinational, Indian large sector, consumer product sector, machinery. And the experience is very, very enviable on the table today. So I will request everybody to put in their ideas, share, and let us bring out certain valuable suggestions which we can take to the government. And here I thought I will get the opportunity to listen to Rakesh Kumar ji first, but I was given the responsibility to initiate and set the ball rolling. I'm sure we would be enlightened to hear from you, because he has a very wide experience in linking with all the government policy bodies required for promoting the exports. Thank you very much, Mr. Bhattacharya.
Thank you, Ji. Mr. Rakesh Kumar, of course, needs no introduction in this forum. May I request you, sir, to speak a few words and set the webinar rolling.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bhattacharya. First of all, thank you very much, Mr. Subodh Jindal. Dr. Subodh Jindal is, in fact, very well known among us as the guru of our food processors people. He's the one who is basically connecting the entire food processing sector all over with the government and with the other players for the forward linkage. It is his humbleness that he mentioned me that I am the one who is going to connect them. Anyway, dear friends of IHE 2020, Dr. Subodh Jindal, President, and other distinguished members of the All India Food Processors Association, respected panelists, and our supporters in the hospitality sector across 55 countries. As custodian of IHE 2020, India's largest hospitality sector trade show, the India Expo Center in March, that is IML, has been engaging week after week with its supporters and stakeholders to organize webinars on matters of contemporary relevance to our intended audience, as well as our two virtual showcase of new products that have become integral to the post-COVID hospitality world. Friends, fortunately for us, these webinars have been well conceived by hospitality sector professionals and their organizations, such as Indian Culinary Forum, Indian Federation of the Culinary Association, National Restaurant Association of India, Purchasing Professionals Forum India, PPFI, HPMF, ASAM and IPHA, and all other connected body of the hospitality sector. We have been supported in our endeavor by leaders of the kitchen equipment and storage furniture and furnishing, crockery, cutlery, grocery, glassware, bakery, confectionery, mithai, namkeen, all these bodies also. And the most important associations along with us are Hotermai and HRA. So what was missing in our discussion these days? Mr. Jindal, we have been really missing you a lot. Now, was any participation by the food processing industry? In fact, with this webinar, we hope to not only forge a long-term relationship or reinstate relationship with the All India Food Processors Association, which for the past 77 years has been providing leadership to an industry that is crucial to the agriculture sector because it reduces from wastage through preservation and value addition and offers our hardworking farmers an economically viable alternative to engaging in distressed sales of perishable agriculture produce. More importantly, the food processing industry has become an abiding symbol of what our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji has so evocatively described as Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliant India. By using Indian inputs to make world-class products, the food processing industry has shown that the best way to go vocal about local is to let your actions speak and themselves, not only to India, but to the world. I would like to point out here that the food processing sector, especially the MSMEs, despite the liquidity crunch, kept our local kirana shops and our modern food stores well stocked with all the essentials required for the day-to-day living, even during the extensive lockdown. I think that was the major thing. If you see it other way around, that during lockdown, there was no scarcity of the goods over there. One of the most touching stories, in fact, was about how the sales of the Parle-G biscuit touched the sky during the lockdown months because they provided sustenance to migrant laborers trudging back from cities and towns to their home villages. I'm sure our honorable panelists today would have many more such heartwarming stories to relate. The topic of today's webinar is apt for the times we live in. The future of the Indian food industry in the emerging global order sector in action mode basis up for the opportunities and prepares to be imbibe the new normal. It promises to be enlightening discussion, one we have never had before. With the world experiencing a massive economic upheaval as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the food processing industry has to look for its next big move and nurture the new green shoots. It has to also plan its operations and allocate its resources according to the easing of the lockdown around the country and in international markets. A new world trade order is emerging rapidly. How can India be on top of it? So there are a lot of big questions which I think Mr. Jindal is going to raise because he has expertise. By title also, he is a doctor. so he can analyze the lot of situations, what are happening, what is going to happen, the futuristic policies also. So let me now introduce our expert panelists, and also welcome them, Mr. M.A. Tejani, Managing Director, GITS Food Products Private Limited. Welcome you, Mr. Tejani, on this forum. Dr. A.K. Tyagi, Director, Haldiram Snack Foods Limited. Dr. Tyagi, thank you very much. You are joining again. Last time also you were with us. You shared with us a lot of new ideas. Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Chandramohan Gupta, Director, Corporate Affairs, Coca-Cola India. Thank you very much, Chandramohan ji, being with us today. Mr. Joydeep Kalra, Director, GD Food Manufacturing India Private Limited. Thank you very much, Kalra ji. Mr. Girish Bajaj, Director, Bajaj Process Pack Limited. Welcome, Bajaj Saab. On behalf of IML and our showpiece event, IHE 2020, I extend a warm welcome to Dr. Subodh Jindal, President, All India Food Processors Association, who is not only a stalwart in the sector, but also very dear and personal friend of mine. I really admire his working. I admire his knowledge. Thank you very much, Dr. for joining and mentoring today all of us. And to deliver his introductory talk. After Dr. Jindal talk, the moderator of this webinar, Swarish Bhattacharya, whom most of you may be aware, know very well. He is a very renowned personality in this journalism world. He will take charge and get the experts talking over to you. Thank you very much, Dr. Jindal. Thank you, all the panelists.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ji. Before we start, a little video from the side of IEML. It sort of introduces what IHE 2020 will be all about. So it will take a minute or two of your time. Radhika, could you please?
I'm just playing it.
Thank you, Radhika, for playing the video.
Parishi, just 1 minute, if you allow. Dr. Jindal, in fact, this is going to be the new format of the next Hospitality Expo, which is going to be virtual because of the now COVID time. Now this is going to now take place on virtual, and I'm also very delighted to share with you that Export Promotion Council for Handicraft, EPCH, of which I am also Director General, we just concluded our world largest virtual show along with the 1,500 exhibitors just yesterday. It was a 6-day show which was visited and also experienced by 4,150 overseas large volume buyers and participated by 1,500 exhibitors. A properly platform was along with the proper booth system where the entire content and also the live connection of the video call and the WhatsApp call, everything was there, experiencing as if you are in a real show. So just for information, we are going to have enough show on that level. Thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry, please take it forward.
Rakesh, you should pitch the entire food product range in this kind of a platform, so that everybody can see across the world and know what India is offering.
Yeah, because right now visits are closed, the buyers are not coming, flights are not operating, nothing is happening. So whatever is our backward integration, that has to be put along with the forward linkage. And the forward linkage, which was the organization of the trade fair, is just closed. Now there's the only move that we have to do it virtually. Yeah. Thank you. So I think we need your support later on, and we'll work together on this. Thank you.
The industry is there. We'll be working together. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for the assurance, sir. Mr. Tyagi, Dr. Tyagi, could you please unmute yourself? Okay.
He's on the phone.
I think he's on the phone. Okay, so Mr. Tejani will start the proceedings with you, and then we'll ask Dr. Tyagi to join us. So, Mr. Tejani, as we had said that I'll be going to each one of you to make a short opening statement. Dr. Tyagi, I'll come back to you. I was just asking Mr. Tejani the question, but he has also gone out of the screen for a moment. Mr. Tejani, could you unmute yourself, please?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm muted and set to go.
Yes. We were discussing this a little before we came online, and that was I will ask each one of you to make a short introductory statement focusing on one issue that is central to the discussion today. And the issue that you were very keen on talking about was, that within the food processing sector, there is a gap. They're the big players, we have two of them already here, like Coca-Cola India and Haldiram. And then there are the MSMEs, which actually consists of the bulk of the industry. So from an MSME perspective, what have the last 3 months been like? And what are the support systems you expect to be in place now to help you overcome the difficulties you've undergone? Mr. Tejani? Okay, I think there's a connectivity problem. The Dr. Tyagi, my original question to you was, now that we're starting this whole discussion on the food processing industry, which is a very important and integral part of the hospitality sector, which we essentially cater to. But what has been your experience of the past 3 months? And what are the opportunities you see presenting themselves in the months ahead?
Yeah, definitely. I think it is a big challenge to every industry, including ours. If we divide the food industry into the two categories, one is the food FMCG, and second is the hospitality industry, just like a restaurant and hotel, for which we belong, and we are doing the business in this sector. So we are getting in the food FMCG V-shaped recovery. And in the last 3 to 4 months, food FMCG has reached to pre-COVID volume. Whatever they are doing pre-COVID, but not the growth. So it is if you take the example of April month, so there was a big degrowth for every company. Right. Then May month we have recovered with some thing, and then in the June month we have further improved with the help of the government and with the help of the opening, unlockdown, and etc. So if we conclude the FMCG company, so there is a V-shaped recovery in the FMCG company, either it is food FMCG or non-food FMCG, and FMCG as a whole reached to the pre-COVID level. Now we have to do a lot of the effort to obtain the growth. first maybe 5% growth, then 10% growth, then 15% growth. And
what kind of growth do you predict? What kind of growth do you predict in this market? Because the market seems to be quite favorable.
I think FMCG, food FMCG, we are expecting about near to 10% growth in the coming month. And later on, maybe after near to Diwali, maybe 15% growth. Because this V-shaped recovery is very good, and the customer response is good, because we have created a lot of the avenue to get the growth, just like e-commerce on the big way, just like a home delivery is a big way. So with the help of the home delivery, with the help of the e-commerce, similarly the consumer trend in the FMCG has been changed. If you see, there is most of the state had the lockdown Saturday, Sunday. So consumer is mostly buying from Monday to Friday. Therefore, we have directed our team to make the service level at a very high between Monday to Friday, so that we will not get any stock out problem. And we can cope up our demand. Similarly, we have also reorganized our supply chain and also reorganized the supply chain of our distributor from 7 o'clock to 12 or 1 p.m. Previously, they were doing from 9 to 5:30 or 6. Similarly, if we take the hospitality and hotel industry, because we also belong to the restaurant business, so definitely there is a U-shaped recovery. It is very difficult to hotel, it is very difficult to restaurant to go. They are in a big degrowth because you are not getting the customer whatever you want for dining. And similarly, home delivery is also limited because of the lot of excitement for immunity and other things. But definitely, as per our experience, there will be U-shaped recovery in the hotel and restaurant industry, and the V-shaped recovery in the FMCG industry has been starting. And
so I think that's a very, very positive, note, because all this while when we were interacting with our friends from the hospitality sector, we only heard of doom and gloom that there's really no growth happening. And as you rightly said, because of several factors. So it's in that context, the growth of the hospital, the food processing sector is something commendable.
Yeah, because we have कहते हैं कि हमें कोरोना के साथ ही जीना है, so we have to build up the system, just like a social distance, just like a temperature screening, just like a COVID help desk, just like a maintaining the distance between the pupil and maintaining the hygiene standard. Hygiene previously we are already maintaining. GMP and GHP already maintaining. We have to add only temperature screening, social distance, and some COVID help there.
That's right. So, I will come to Mr. Chandramohan Gupta now. I know, sir, that you are also time constrained today because there's another important webinar you have to attend. Mr. Gupta, could you unmute yourself, please?
That call has got deferred by half an hour, so I'm available.
Okay, good. That's good news for us. So now, Mr. Gupta...
Sorry to interrupt, but I'd like to apologize for getting disconnected. I am now reconnected.
Yeah, good. Absolutely. It's so nice to see you. And I'm going to soon bombard you with my question. So please be prepared. Meanwhile, Mr. Gupta, we were having a very interesting conversation before, we went live. It was about how, say, a company like Coca-Cola India is engaged in not only going local, but also going local for a global market. And that global market is something you're extending to all your vendors, your suppliers. So please tell us how this whole work, how this whole thing works, going local for the global market.
Yeah. So one of the important tenets that the Coca-Cola system operates with globally is that wherever we go, we tend to try to localize our operation to the extent not only in terms of the ingredients, the feedstock, the machinery, it is also the ownership. So globally, the Coca-Cola companies, all their bottling operations, 95% of the bottling operations are locally owned. It's only in some pockets of the world. And even in India, about 55% of the bottling is owned by the company, which eventually in the long term will have local ownership. So our system operates with the mindset that if we have operated for 138 years by being local and prospering, that is the same model that we need to follow for the next 138 years. And that has been our, our recipe for success. Coming to the question of how do we develop the local ecosystem so that there is relevance for the local system to participate both in the Coca-Cola global system and also in the larger food and beverage system. And towards that, we are committed. How do we do it? Let me show you a slide. 1 second. Just give me a second. Yeah. Can you see the slide?
The screen, you have started screen sharing, yes. Yeah, we can see it now. Yeah.
Okay. So typically we re-entered the country in 1993 after leaving the country in 1978 because, there were certain regulatory pressures on foreign direct investments in a few sectors. So after coming back in 93, we decided that we will invest not only in developing our system, we will also develop the local allied system. And here is an example where currently, for example, we have developed the cold drink equipment industry in India to a level of world class. Cold drink equipment go from India to Europe, a market like Europe, which is developed, a market like Middle East, market like South Africa. Packaging, the standards that we use are the global standards. So the material that Coca-Cola Europe uses or Coca-Cola Japan uses is the same quality material that India ecosystem uses. So that ecosystem puts out almost 30,000 metric tons of packaging to neighboring markets. India is a coffee bean, green coffee bean, very unique blend of coffee, which goes almost to all parts of the world. Again, because we have worked with farmers, created the local variety, conducive environment for that variety. Sugar, of course, we are the second largest producer of sugar. But the fact that the sugar that we buy for our beverages is of a particular grade. And that sugar is again available to the Coca-Cola system in neighboring countries. Then we have a very interesting model where we were using sugarcane molasses to convert that into ethanol, and from ethanol we were converting that to methyl ethyl glycol, which was then converted, which was combined with polyphthalic acid (PTA) to give you PET resin. India is the only source globally where our plant bottle packaging, which is a bio PET material, the MEG comes from India, and that is about 68,000 metric tons of MEG. It goes across our global system. And then, of course, our global system also buys 11,000 metric tons of fruit pulp, largely mango and, pineapple and a couple of other varieties. The point that I'm trying to make is that the fact that we were able to develop almost, say, about 150 odd suppliers to global standards by investing in them, by bringing in processes, technology, has helped them to not only supply to us. Probably today we may have started by buying 100% of their exports, but today it is possibly a ratio of 1:10. So out of 10 what they export, only 10% is consumed by the Coke system, and 90% of it is consumed by the larger food sector. So there are these opportunities that exist. The point I would want to bring on the table is that India has the talent, India has the aptitude, India business investors have the appetite. It is about getting a nudge from the supporting agencies, whether they are the government of India agencies, they are developmental agencies, and and saying that don't worry, we are behind you, move forward. There are countries who have done this very successful, and China is one of them. So I hope this answers your question.
I think it is. It does, and it's a very heartening example to see the Indian products are going everywhere, and the Coke that they drink in America has the same sugar as the Coke we are drinking in India.
Yes.
So that's amazing, Well, I'll go back to Mr. Tejani, Again, a very senior and eloquent spokesperson for the industry. Mr. Tejani, like Coke is, of course, the big boy of the group, you represent the MSME sector, What has been the MSME sector's, experience of the last 3 months, and what do you see what does the future hold for you?
As I started speaking and got disconnected, what I was trying to say is that the long-term objective, as outlined by Dr. Jindal and Mr. Rakesh Kumar, is fine. And I wish I was one of Coke's buddies so that they would take me up as well. But unfortunately, that is not the case. So I will speak on behalf of the MSMEs who Coke is not with. If you don't mind, Mr.
No worries. Please go ahead.
Well, see, if you consider the condition of the MSME in general, particularly after this COVID lockdowns, repeated lockdowns, we are all, in a now position where, you see, either we will have to commit suicide or, you see, something similar. So let's say we are in ICU. I'm putting it in little colorful language, please don't mind. But the point is that, you see, now for us, the question is one of survival, after which we'll go to the next stage of revival. And it will be followed by then growth. If our first priority is for a hungry man is to find food, and only then he will think of a bigger picture of a long-term perspective. But his immediate need is to satisfy his hunger and then worry about, okay, now I had enough to eat today. How about tomorrow? So survival, revival, and then growth. Now, one of the key issues, lifeblood of all business, any business, is finance, money, capital, whatever you want to call it. And because of these situations, our financial conditions have become quite precarious. Despite all this 20,000 crore package and other things, effectively on the ground, these MSMEs are not yet receiving the kind of promised assistance. And it is not enough to give additional loans on the top of existing loans and demand interest at a later date. That's not the kind of solution, because that only adds to the burden. So I would think that the way forward for the MSME at present would be to try to get out of debt as quickly as possible. Of course, that is easier said than done. And because the interest meter never stops ticking. The more you borrow, the more you are landing yourself into possible trouble, because no one has any control. Who would have anticipated in 2019 what has happened in 2020?
Right.
So,
in this case, I wanted to ask you, we also have a situation of cash recovery is not happening, because
yes.
Look, shopkeepers are stretched very badly,
Yeah. So the government is holding back on the tax refunds. That's our money, which we should rightfully get back immediately, but which is not being paid to us. Now, this could be then there are several other issues, like I can say that, in terms of pre-shipment inspection, and then there are difficulties in importing certain ingredients from the EU countries to manufacture here and re-export. Like what you are talking, Atmanirbhar, if we are able to import for the purpose of making product in India and re-export with value addition, in fact, government should roll out the red carpet for us. Instead, we are facing all kinds of blockages. So this could be. And on top of this, of course, there are many specific issues which I discussed extensively with Dr. Jindal. He knows them, but I'll conclude with only thing. Now, new laws are coming in. One is the government has brought in that new wage code with minimum wages, which of course is a very peculiar document, inasmuch the Supreme Court has laid down that there should be 2,700 calories per person, average household consisting of husband, wife and 2 children. The 2 children will be treated as 1 adult. So 2,700 calories into 3 per day is their nourishment requirement, then education, house rent, recreation, and the Supreme Court has mandated that every such worker's family is entitled to 66 meters of cloth per year. But what kind of cloth? There are no clarity at all in any of these things. Then the entire industry, including Coca-Cola, is dependent on the use of plastic materials for packaging. Now the new plastic waste management rules that have been recently published on their website is again going to be a very complex affair, and the MSMEs are not geared to be able to take up this job. This has been dumped on the industry because the urban local bodies are unable to do their job. So there are many allied issues which I don't want to take more time, but this just gives you a brief idea of the kind of situation that MSMEs are facing today.
Right. So I will actually, your statement has given me the lead for the question I'll ask Mr. Joydeep Kalra, because he was particularly interested, because now there's a lot of talk happening and Dr. Jindal also pointed this out, of companies moving base from China, for instance, to India. Now, of course, it's a great news headline. People are all overjoyed, but it happened very easily and very quickly. So, Mr. Joydeep Kalra, you represent a company which is pretty well known in your line of business. Pickles, I've seen top pickles and sauces in several restaurants and hotels now. So obviously you're making the right forays. But how do you think the government can create the sort of an environment to enable international companies as well as the domestic players to flourish in the post-COVID market? What are your thoughts on the subject?
Okay, thank you so much. So first of all, I'd like to digress a little, and I can relate much to what Mr. Tejani spoke about on the impact on MSMEs. So we also have, can I just take 1 or 2 minutes to...
Absolutely. There is no way Mr. Tejani cannot inspire you to say something. So please go ahead.
So I was taking my notes. So the financial situation indeed has been precarious, and moratoriums, etc. do not help, because ultimately it's just a deferment. The onus of paying back and the interest and everything lies still on you, right? So, as our fellow panelists said, that there is one food FMCG and then there is one HoReCa segment, which is there. So we cater to both. So the larger part of our turnover comes from food FMCG, and some bit of our turnover, which is not as large, it could be 5%, between 5-10% comes from HoReCa packs. But we have indeed suffered largely during this period of lockdown. In fact, I have a couple of dates. So lockdown started, I think, from the 23rd of March when our factories were closed. So there are 5 factories that we have as of date, spread across 4 states of India. So different rules, different administrations. So it was quite tough to get permissions from all, because, Punjab has a different way of looking at things, and UP has a different way of things, and then Delhi has a different rule altogether, and then Rajasthan. That's where our factories are. So the first to open was the UP factory, which is, center is based out of Delhi, which was the last. So the first factory all the factories got locked out on the 23rd. The first to open was on the 3rd of April, which was UP, followed by 8th of April, which was Rajasthan. And the last to open was Delhi, which was 27th of April. So there was almost like, a month of no manufacturing plus minus, a month of no stock movement. We had finished goods lying with us, which we could not distribute. The distributors were not ready to pump in money because their labor had run away. Transport costs had gone very, very high. Just because, they were twice the kind of times required on the road to transport. You had licenses, you had curfew passes, but then all those curfew passes needed to be checked manually and a couple of times at each state. And as I say that we have factories across, 4 states. So there is material moving in from one particular place which has a backward integration, where tomato paste gets done in Amritsar, Khadur Sahib, to all the way to Neemrana. So you have to cross many borders, right? So things were pretty much tough, and we suffered financially heavily. And that's where, I could hear Mr. Tejani, and my heart could relate to that. So April and May.
If you allow me a second's interjection, I was very heartened to know that you were getting a tomato paste from Amritsar and not from China. No?
I specifically noted this point because China has been a leader in the processing variety, etc. So that's one kind of thing that we would also want India to focus on more on processing variety. The stable variety that people focus on, and so that is a kind of right crop that we would want. Okay, so we had our problems April and May. April was totally bloodbath. May was a little better. We got permissions to operate our plants in April. And we were able to kind of meet the market demands. So people have been thinking whether they should spend or not. So they're spending money, they have tight pockets, because as we understand, a couple of companies resorted to pay cuts, and there are people, there are brothers and sisters who are involved in the hospitality industry who have not been able to go back to their jobs, and I don't know how many of them are able to earn their daily livelihood. So people have tight pockets, and they've been spending after a lot of thought. And what this has meant for a business like us is that our smaller pack sales have started to go up. We were not into too much of a QSR, but we were into food preparation and catering. So while that part of the portfolio has gone down, our small pack volume has gone up by leaps and bounds. As much as we experienced 2.5 times the growth, 2.5 times the demand from market that we would get on any non-COVID month in terms of the COVID month. Because there were people who were at homes, who were cooking at homes, who were not wanting to go out. Even if, ordering in opened and there were deliveries that were taking place, people were still wanting to cook at home. And if you look at the social media, it's all surrounded with lots of people making noodles at home, people making golgappas at home, people making dhoklas at home, the kind of things that people would not usually make at home. And this, my colleague from GITS can, also correlate to. So people have been trying a lot of things like, they usually don't try. Baking powder was running out of stock. Noodles were, excess in demand. Jellies, etc. were excess in demand. So that's the kind of impact that we have had on COVID. In June, we came back, we sprung back, and we were able to meet our numbers. In fact, we exceeded our last year numbers.
So you are also, what Dr. Tyagi talked about, a V-shaped growth,
Yeah.
You have seen the V-shaped growth in a big way.
Yes. But while I say that, there's a V-shaped demand that has been there, but then the labor hasn't returned. So where you said, support from government and the kind of things. So a lot of automation is the need of the hour. Less dependency on the labor is required. And of course, I hear from my fellow colleagues from the industry that the government has, done a lot of things to promote India as a destination for FDI. We understand that FDI inflows have hit an all-time high of USD 51 billion in 2019, which was increase of 20% when compared to 2018. And India today ranks 12th amongst top 20 host economies for FDI. So while China becomes less and less important and relevant for the larger community, the overseas community, India is definitely an attractive option for people to come and start setting up industry here, because we have a relatively large.
Which brings me to the point.
Yeah.
Because someone has asked this question: what is the future of the food processing industries in the SEZs? Do you see the SEZs sort of?
So I'm sorry, we ourselves do not present in SEZ, so I am really not in a position to answer this. Maybe another fellow panelist
okay.
to answer.
Okay. Fine. We'll maybe address it to Dr. Jindal later. But as of now, you said that labor is a big issue. It's a problem for you, no?
Labor is still a big issue, because not all the labor, because initially we got permission to, the problem was the permission. So the day the factories opened, due to social distancing norms and all, we only got permission to transport 5% of our overall, to have 5% of the labor come there, while Punjab wanted us to house the labor, which is practically not possible. So gradually things eased. Transport was still a problem, because if public transport wasn't running, there were women that were employed. A lot of our base is also women from nearby areas, because we try and get our labor from the nearby catchment areas. Now the problem is if it's a distance of between 5 to 10 kilometers, men folk would still pedal and come on a cycle.
Right.
But how about the women? So we had huge challenges on that. And again, then people have gone back. So palayan jo hua hai, people have gone back to their places, were not able to come back.
Right.
So there is still a lot to be done on that front.
That's right.
And when we go ahead and if the government wants to promote the Make in India initiative, Invest India initiative, we would also want them to give us subsidies and grants and all that.
Right.
So a lot of encouragement has really been done. So we have to replicate the China model. That's what I would say here. Yeah.
May I narrate a small true story, which will allow us to realize that we cannot underestimate China.
That's right.
So, right here in Pune, one of our fellow industrialists has set up a mushroom processing industry, mushroom growing.
Right.
And they worked out the typical viability, etc. That's all the normal things. And there was a very large and very tempting export market. What happened was that as this export began from India and China, observed because China had a virtual monopoly on export of mushrooms.
Right.
What happened was that whatever our local cost of our fellow industries in Pune was for the cost of the locally packed mushroom, that was the delivered CI price of China. They simply crashed their prices down by more than 50%. As a result, about 16 factories in India who were only specifically for mushroom for export all shut down.
So that shows the difference government support can make to your product. The government has to be
pricing
aggressive.
Is not political. It is not industrial pricing.
Right.
So that if they decide that they want to kill, like you're talking about tomato paste, very nice. But you see, China will come out with such a price that it will kill everybody, and they will still be able to sustain it long enough to destroy us.
Right. That's right. So, Mr. Bajaj, that brings, you are the one who designs food processing companies, industrial units, not only in India, but also in Africa. So you have a global footprint. Again, you represent this whole thing about local going global, which Mr. Chandramohan Gupta just talked about a little while ago. What does, and this not talk about automation and not talk about, labor, economical, production processes. What are the new developments that the industry should look at closely to become more efficient, more, I think, more labor efficient too,
So now, what I would like to come in here is that, while since we are also associated with the food processing industry in a very, very close manner, we happen to be servicing, setting up, and also backing up food FMCG companies like Mr. Kalra's and Mr. Tejani's. But so what we have found in the last 3 months, of course, there is no doubt about it, is that the first quarter across the industry has been almost gone or has been wiped out, especially the 2 months. So there is no doubt about it. But my sense of the whole industry, I would like to back Dr. Tyagi's comments that we also see a very strong V-curve recovery in at least the food FMCG companies. So I would be, I am quite optimistic about the industry and its growth pattern in the times to come. Of course, we've seen bad phases, which unfortunately none of us could do anything about. So, but now when we are in Q2 now. So, for one, I see a V recovery, which hopefully by the start of the festival season would see a very good, strong recovery by then, hopefully, with all the news about the vaccines or the medicines and stuff like that also coming in, which is also encouraging. Now, as far as the industry is concerned, we see two things. One is in the Indian food industry, most of it comes from the SSI or in the unorganized sector. And that is the industry which needs to now ramp up in terms of its automation. Now, whether, traditionally food FMCGs have all been labor-oriented businesses, especially the unorganized sector, it was more considered as an employment generation than anything else. But now we see one is a very major thing is, yes, we see a lot of new interest or even inquiries from the existing people wanting to say how can we be able to ramp up production even with the constrained labor that we have or we expect to have. So that is one shift that the industry has to adopt, whether or not they like it or not, but it has to be adapted that how a factory which was run by 200 people can run with 100 people. And that's a fact of life which we have to embrace. Second thing that I see, Mr. Bhattacharya, is that the food FMCG companies also has to learn from other industries, especially let us say the pharmaceutical, where we see large third-party manufacturing happening across India, which manufactures for both the national and international brands and also helps them. So, in India, we have the manufacturers also being the marketeers. Whereas this shift has to come in whether today or tomorrow, where if I am a third-party manufacturer, I've got nothing to do with marketing. I have nothing to do with the branding. I am very happy to be the back-end provider for a brand like Tops, for a brand like other famous brands, even the MSME. And that
I'll give you the example of General Mills in America. Right. It produces, product items for just about every big food company in the United States.
Yes.
Something like that. That's the model they're looking
at. Absolutely. That is a model. And going by my experience in the industry for the last 25 years, if we have done, say, about 500 fruit factories, I don't even recall, maybe even 10 or 15 of them were set up with a basic thought process that we will not be marketing our products. We will only be the backbone or the manufacturing base, which now has to change. We need such companies to come in. Even when we talk about companies shifting out of China, right? Now, if you see, I can share one news which is around that Japanese government has actually encouraging Japanese companies to shift base from China to any other Southeast Asian countries. And there are about 57 such countries. So hypothetically speaking, even 5 of them are food or food-related industries. Why can't India or Indian companies be pursuing such companies to say, okay, we will set up for you and you come in and we will manufacture for you. And that is how probably we would be globally viable also in terms of our capacities, in terms of our marketing. So third-party manufacturing, automation, and also trying to attract foreign investment, especially the people wanting. Because let's not forget, India is one of the largest or even number 2 in most of the agro process produce in the world.
Right.
We are number 1 in so many sectors, in so many products. So
and also we are also wasting a lot of farm produce.
Yes.
Which can be very gainfully used.
So for example, we are number 1 in many of the fruit, number 2 in many of the fruits and vegetables. We remain so. Wheat, rice, milk, we are number 1 producer. So what it requires is an integrated approach. Where we see a lot of FMCGs or MSMEs go bad is their inability to market.
Right.
So my always advice to the companies is that don't just look at markets. Why can't you be the back end of the already existing people and manufacture for them? So third party is also going to be the next thing in besides automation.
Right. So, Mr. Jindal, I'll come to Dr. Jindal. I'll come to some specific questions which have been raised by our audience. One is that again, when you talk about getting foreign companies in, how do you attract them? Do you set up stronger SEZ mechanisms? Do you change the laws of the country? How do you get the foreign companies to move base? This 57 Japanese companies that we just heard about, which are looking to move base out of China. How do we get all 57 of them to come to India?
Mr. Bhattacharya, you're asking me this question. I think this is the one we keep breaking our heads every day. And
hello, Radhika, is there an audio problem?
I think that's a network error. I'll just check with sir.
Yeah, please. Okay, I guess while the network issue is being settled, Mr. Gupta, coming back to, one point we could not discuss was this whole circular economy, the equation that you're creating, you're sort of promoting in a big way in Coca-Cola India.
Yeah.
That, I think, holds a lot of potential for people, for farmers in the fruit sector, farmer growing fruits, because I think that is where they lose out. A lot of, I think 30% of the fruits produced in India are actually wasted at the farms themselves. Yeah. There's also, the Northeast discovering its potential as a major fruit producer. Do you think, the circular economy, Dr. Jindal, I'll just come back to you. I'll just come back to you with the question. I was just asking Mr. Gupta the question about circular economy. I'll just come back to you now that your the connection has been restored. So, Mr. Gupta, your thoughts on the circular economy and how it can make a real difference to farmers.
All right. So let me quickly share a slide which will explain what the plan is, so that Can you see the slide?
I can. Yeah.
All right. Being a large enterprise and always being vulnerable because the larger companies and larger brands tend to be targeted on policy, rightly so, because the expectation is that if you are bigger as a player, you have to show the industry the way forward. So one of the key tasks that we took upon ourselves was that when the Prime Minister made a statement that we need to double the farmer income by 2022, what were the avenues that were available to us? And there we quickly realized that the land holding is something which is actually not allowing scale and productivity. And that is the time we thought that it was important that the company starts investing directly without any commercial contract. So all the investment would be in under our CSR and our procurement companies, where we would go and create demo farms. And what would these demo farms look like? They would typically be 2-acre farms, or a farmer who has got a larger land holding, but he's willing to experiment on 2 acres of farm. And we started with crops like mango, then went on to lychee, went on to oranges, mosambi, and several more varieties of fruit. And what we went and did there was that we brought in a new methodology of planting. We brought in good agriculture practices, management, drip irrigation, the whole crop management, the canopy management, so that the fruiting gets the maximum nutrition. Then we ensured that our fruit processing partner companies like Jain Irrigation, there are several of them, FNI, they in turn tied up with these regions or pockets or districts where we would go and create those demo farms. And we in turn would then buy from these fruit. We would give them upfront commitment. We would talk about that in our product positioning, market, talk about ensuring how the product you buy comes from a program which helps the farmer increase productivity and hence increases income. It is a superior yield and all the other allied benefits. Now we were able to do this is because at that point in time, you see the number there, out of 90 million metric tons, which was the fruit production. Today, it would be probably at 105 million metric tons. We buy almost 4 lakh metric tons of fruit. And because we had scale, because we have this big fruit drink brand called Maaza, and then we were developing a brand called Minute Maid, we decided to make a very bold statement. And this was also to ensure that, we get noticed by the political leadership in the sense that, look, we are here. The whole story about, going local, willing to invest, bring in technology, bring in global best practices, use our supplier ecosystem to invest into farmers, create demo farms. So can we create, say, 2,000 demo farms in, say, 4-5 states? Because agriculture is such a subject there where it is not about preaching or teaching. It is the farmers learn by, there has to be testimony. Proof of concept has to be shown, because his whole life is dependent on the success of the crop. So unless you don't show him the proof of concept, he is not going to give you his piece of land.
That's right.
Because his whole survival depends on that. And along with that, you also, what are the supporting mechanism and elements that you provide to him? So we built this to a scale where we were investing along with our partners almost 20-25 crores in 3 or 4 states, creating demo farms. And I'm happy to report that this was subsequently taken up by the state developmental boards. Because, for example, the state of Andhra Pradesh used to not give subsidy to farmers when it came to ultra high density. They were limiting subsidy only to high density plantation. When they saw the success of our demo farms, they extended the subsidy to ultra high density plantations also. And that's how, it became a truly public-private partnership in pushing an agenda in a constrained situation of landholding, and also ensuring farmer incomes double, treble.
Right.
This was the circular model.
Yeah, this, I've had the opportunity of seeing it very closely in Andhra Pradesh, and I've seen the work Jain Irrigation is also doing. It's amazing work. So, I'm sure for such, examples can be multiplied across the industry. So, Dr. Jindal, coming back to my question to you before, sorry for the technological issues that came in between. But Dr. Jindal, you were talking about beating your heads, with the problem I just mentioned. How do we get foreign investments to come and stay on in the country?
Yeah, you see, there are identified almost, half a dozen factors. One, I said, was infrastructure. Second was the cost of utilities, power, water, gas, continuity and security of the utilities. The third is the overall working efficiency of the system, of the people. Okay. Then the fourth thing is that laws have to be very practical. Not sometimes like it happens in our country. The laws are not practical, and we have to argue and push and force the government, and and it looks as if we are trying to do something not proper. So that kind of a scenario should not be there. The enforcement agencies are not very working very systematically. So this entire thing of laws, regulations and enforcement is the fourth thing. And the next thing is that the logistics have to be very smooth. Sending material, procuring, backward chain, forward chain, shipping chains, they have to work like fast. So these are and obviously the overall government policy to issue licenses and the working space and things. Here we lack in a few things, and unless the government changes the mindset, and in the government I found that presently the ministers are okay to change. The Honorable Minister of Food Processing Industries has taken initiative in so many things. And as Mr. Kalra would know, Dr. Tyagi knows, IFA worked with the Honorable Minister almost day in, day out during the months of the lockdown to get permissions for movement, for transport, for workers, for materials, for packaging to reach the factories. They took the best initiatives possible. Even, they were available at 10 at night. But still our bureaucratic system is not what it should be to really get these investments in India.
That's right.
That has to change.
In fact, Mr. Tejani, that brings me to something you said very interestingly yesterday, that, the problem is not in intentions, the problem is in the implementation, And the problem in our country, as Mr. Jindal says, the lovely policies, but they're not implemented on the ground with the effectiveness that is required. Your thoughts on this?
See, as Dr. Jindal has put it, I'll put it in one sentence. Our bureaucracy has a problem for every solution. So, this is the work. And for the MSME, see, despite all these good wishes, good intentions, and ideal, the kind of future prospects, I would say, the two main constraints, as Dr. Jindal pointed out, are the finance and the regulatory compliances that are necessary, because they are all very mindless and nobody wants to think or take any trouble about what they are trying to do. So they are not here to help us. So what we'll say, we have always been trying to say in Maharashtra that if you can't help us, at least get out of the way. Let us work. But like he says, that's a very hard nut to crack. And that mindset that all businesses are scoundrels, all businessmen are crooks, that is not yet gone.
That's right. I think, Dr. Tyagi, Dr. Tyagi.
Sorry, sure. Just on a very lighter note. Sorry to intervene. Mr. Tejani, Mr. Jindal rightly said. Normally what we very in a routine way say, the government issues the order, roko mat jane do. Now at the field level, they say roko mat jane do. So the interpretation goes different. It's an issue of only comma. So that is the roko mat jane do, and that becomes a roko mat jane do. So I think we have to be very clear on that. So yeah, thank you.
All of us are facing the problems from FSSA and legal metrology, and despite our repeated requests that they should issue one single multi-purpose license for industry, why should I have a separate license for manufacturing, for relabeling, for export, for import, and for trading? Why is that one license sufficient for everything? So then we have suggested that the laws are mostly misinterpreted rather than correctly interpreted. So we have suggested that they should form an expert empowered committee at every FDA office around the country in all states, so that if they comprise of legal expert, technical expert, industry association, consumer representative, as well as the FDA officer, and whatever the issues come in front of them, they are properly understood and debated, and they will not make a mountain out of a molehill, which is the present situation. And everywhere where you try to go, if there is a case made on you which is totally false, there's no way you can do anything about it. You will end up getting fines. And there are, I hope, Mr. Kaza, you are not wearing a black coat, because I'm coming to the black coat. There are lots of fellows in the FDA office and those designated places with black coats waiting to come and do their fixers. The सब settle करने का है, तो आ जाओ, हम कर लेंगे. And if नहीं हमको fight करने का है merit पे, तो बोले जाओ. So, Mr. Bajaj, I would like to address your very good view that yes, small scale MSMEs have to grow, they have to ramp up, they have to do automation, wonderful. But where's the money?
Sir, for your...
Can I wanted to ask one question to, there is a little bit of an audio problem we're having, but I wanted to ask one question of Mr. Tyagi, Dr. Tyagi. Haldiram's has gone international. It's one company, it's one Indian global company. Now tell me, what are the positives that you find in business environments outside India that you think can be implemented in India? Those positive steps, those the groundbreaking, the ground opening is kind of investment or business atmosphere that they have there.
Yeah, basically, if we categorize the food as Indian food, Haldiram is exporting in around 70 to 80 countries. And we lead the market of the Indian food. So I think, according to me, there is a big scope of Indian food to promote worldwide, for which we are also discussing with the help of Jindal Saab, with the government also, how to promote the Indian food in export market. Currently, our target customer is whatever people of India or Asia living outside the country. That is our target marketing strategy. But if we target the foreigners also, if we target the people who are natively placed at the US, they belong to the US. So I think as a country, as a Haldiram, as a company, as a food, Indian food, there is a big opportunity to target the Indian food worldwide. Other than Asian people also, we can promote this food to their local people also. And we have tried in some of the country and we are very, very successful. But a single company cannot do that. There should be the joint venture between the company and government, that how to promote the Indian food worldwide. And if we take the manufacturing hub, so definitely India is a very big manufacturing hub. We are capable to use the best technology, which we have done in the Haldiram, mainly in the Indian food. And I am proud to say that as on day, most of the plants are fully automatic. Without any touch by the hand, they are fully automatic. So this we have created in the more than 1 decade to make so much automation for the Indian food. And there is further scope for the sweet industry to go more automation. So India is a very big opportunity, according to me, for the Indian food. Either it is a namkeen category, it is a sweet category, domestically as well as globally. So we can work with the help of the government to promote this. It will be our USP to create global wide, because other country cannot make this food, and this is very nutritious. If you take the example of moong dal, it is the low fat and it is the high protein. Similarly, you take example of the nutcracker, it is again high protein. So we have the many food which are very Indian food itself is a nutritious food. If you take any food, because it is made mostly from the lentil, mostly from the agriculture products, and it will also help to the farmers as a Prime Minister's vision to double income of the farmer. Because in Indian food, you are using lentil, mostly you are using wheat, mostly you are using the agriculture product. It is more than 90% agriculture.
So
so I think,
Dr. Tyagi, your point of automation is is very important. I think that. Mr. Bajaj, that must be music to your ears that companies like Haldiram are going almost 100% automated, and one wouldn't expect Indians sweets also to be amenable to automation. What are your thoughts on this development of automation around the country?
See, Mr. Bhattacharya, I would like to just add in one thing. Automation is not a desire; it's a necessity. Especially when it comes to food, it is a necessity. And I don't say it from a perspective of being a machinery manufacturer, while it does mean good business to us. And yes, we do look forward to a good business in times ahead, but it is a necessity. Look, in times to come, when labor is going to be constrained, when post-COVID people are talking about food sanitation, safety, how else would I consider or convince my client that the food that I eat is safe? That is the way I have to. So automation across factories is compulsory and the way forward, which obviously people like Haldiram's, other companies have also shown us the way. Haldiram I've been proud to be associated with the Haldiram group for the last 30 years. And I know the way forward, how the promoters, how the management has always focused on new technologies, machinery and automation. So that is the way India industry has to follow. And that is probably one of the reasons Haldiram is where they are, Second thing, what I would just like to answer, or if I may, because Tejani Sahab is my guru, I call him my guru, is that while MSMEs are constrained in terms of finances, yes, cash flows are constrained, but while we are criticizing the government, which is, of course, we all do, but the government has also come out with schemes. Government has come out with especially our Ministry of Food Processing has come out with a scheme of backward and forward linkages. They've come up with schemes where they say, okay, we will give you subsidies, both at the state level and central government level. You talk about UP, today if there is an investment of 2 crores, the UP government is willing to subsidize it by 50 lakhs. If you talk about central government policies, there are schemes where if you invest in plant machinery and your civil construction up to a tune of 15 crores, the central government ministry is going to give you 5 crores as subsidy. You tell me which industry in the world where a government says we will subsidize your investment by 30%. Government of India is doing it. Even they've come up in the very latest scheme of Atmanirbhar Bharat, they've come up with for very small scale of 25 lakhs, they are saying we will subsidize it. So, see, the challenges are not going to go away anywhere soon. Let's be very clear. I am born and brought up in India. I have seen these challenges from the day I joined business 30 years back, and I don't see even my children would be wishing away these challenges of bureaucracy, red tapeism. All this will remain. And, I've been associated, I've worked in China also. Let me tell you, China में भी red tapeism होता है. ऐसा नहीं है कि वहाँ सब दूध के धुले हैं. वहाँ पे भी government machinery corrupt है. वहाँ पे भी corruption है. But you have to be successful despite and in spite of all this and not be a failure because of this. And that is something that we have to sort of, as entrepreneurs, rise up to the challenge. And I feel specifically in the food FMCG sector, where we all belong, it is a very good opportunity for us. I see a very good, luckily we are in this industry. I always see this in all the webinars that I've attended. I'm lucky to be in food FMCG industry and not in a, let's say, hotel or a tourism industry, which unfortunately has really been hit badly. So let's pull up our things and let's move forward. So yes, automation is the way forward and all other things. Yeah.
Right. In fact,
I would like to add that a lot of the sophisticated or advanced machinery that we need for manufacturing is simply not available in India, and we are compelled to import it.
Right.
So it becomes a very high cost operation. So Mr. Bajaj, please start making those machines in India so that we can buy from you.
Sir, I have, if the panelists allow me, I do have a word or two which I hope may fall on the government's ears as we speak, is that Government of India also needs to sort of take a cue from how the automobile industry has developed to the levels it has. Even to date, when we talk, if there is a fully built up unit, a car to be imported, which is CBU, one has to pay an import duty of 100%. And if the same car is brought in a semi-lockdown condition, one has to pay a 25% duty. But if it is brought in a complete lockdown position and collaborated or a manufacturing setup is done in India, then the same is, there is an import duty of 15%. But what happens in the machinery, and I'm not talking about food machinery, I'm talking about machinery across, it could be for any sector. You simply pay 5 to 7% and you can bring in a completely built up unit. So how will the Indian machinery companies develop over a period of time? We don't have the scales. So we need some sort of a government support in that sense. I would love that international companies come in and compete with us. I would love to compete with the international companies, but in the same ground realities that we are also working in. It's very easy to be working in Italy and producing machinery and simply exporting them to India and other countries with a 5% or a 7.5% import duty than to be working in Indian conditions, as Tejani Sahab, you rightly mentioned. We have a lot of challenges. So I think Government of India also needs to look into this factor as far as import is concerned, and that also applies to even products like paste. Why should paste be allowed to be at, let's say, 5 or 10% under OGL? Why can't we have a higher thing so that Indian industries like Mr. Kalra or others are able to get, we don't get slaughtered, if I may use the word, by the Chinese, by their undercut? Stainless steel industry happens like that.
Just cut you in 1 minute, please. I just wanted to say sort of goodbye to Mr. Gupta. I believe you have to log out.
Yeah. Yes, I do. And just 10 seconds. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I think the discussion is very interesting. I learned a lot and look forward to such more connections. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mr. Chandramohan.
Thank you, sir.
In fact, Mr. Bajaj, coming back to the discussion, I think your points are well taken. But we're sort of running short of time, and I want to ask 2 or 3 questions from our, participants to Mr. Jindal. But before that, Mr. Kalra, I believe I see you have already answered the question which one of the participants asked. Then where do you source the tomatoes for the place? Or what varieties of tomatoes do you use? Is that a trade secret, or would you like to share it with us?
Quite honestly, if I were to tell you honestly, I don't know. So that's the reason why I will probably connect them with one of the people at the Amritsar plant.
Your research and development team, actually.
Because I don't.
So now you've heard everyone. So if for seeing the world from your perspective, or say from the point of view Mr. Tejani's perspective. What do you think will be the big developments to expect in the F&B sector in the rest of the financial year, or maybe even in the next year? What are the big developments ahead that you should prepare for, the industry should prepare for?
Is the question towards me?
Yeah, absolutely.
So in terms of the big development, so there is a change, there is a shift in consumption patterns that I foresee. So first of all, people are going to be cooking more and more at home. So the institutional packs, etc., might just see a decline. A lot of ready-to-eat segment is going to be preferred. So in fact, I consumed a pack of Gits Yellow Dal Tadka today. So a lot of that eating in is going to happen, and obviously HoReCa will come back. There will be a recovery, but I am not sure about a V-shaped recovery as such.
That's true.
Because I was seeing
for HoReCa, it's not likely to happen. The V-shaped recovery is not likely to happen.
QSR, HoReCa, etc. is not going to rebound that fast, even if we get to see that vaccine coming in.
QSR may see a revival, because
slowly,
its take-home service has helped, and that is growing.
Yeah,
and that is good news for say people like you. Your sachet business.
Sachets and all. So we have that minuscule. We have those sachets and all, but that contributes a minuscule percentage.
Okay.
We have larger than that is those institutional packs which go into hotels and restaurants and caterers.
That's right.
So QSR also, I have not eaten a burger or a pizza from Domino's or a McDonald's in the last 3 months. So and usually every day in office we used to get something or the other. So times have changed. So I don't see that recovery happening anytime very soon.
Right.
Okay,
people are wary.
Yes, people are wary, because even if I order in, I have ordered in twice or thrice. The first thing that I do is every time I touch the packaging, I have to wash my hands after that. I will have to transfer it into, even though I am not very fond of using the microwave, but I microwave things now, assuming that it's going to kill all the germs if there are any hand touch things.
Right.
Coming back to the trends, people will move towards more of immunity building products. I see that I was seeing an ad of Inox cinemas today, how they're going to open. And one of the things that's there on their menu is immunity boosting milk. It's a turmeric infused milk, haldi milk.
Right.
So people have to move towards immunity building. I see a lot of sales of those kadas and all. In fact, I'm stocking one even in Tulsi. There's one Tulsi in my cupboard. There's a kada inside here. And people are going to consume a lot of that. So focus is going to be there on fortified products which are nutritional, easy on the go. Maybe think of a cornflakes and milk which you can just carry to your office and just consume it. Right. Those are the kind of things which I see. Trend going on.
So there are opportunities galore. In the new business environment.
Of course.
Mr.
The new world order,
we are going to. So. Talking about Gits, the Gits Gulab Jamun mix is a favorite in my house.
It's like a generic sweet now. That's why I'm so sweet. But what I would like to
I vouch for that, sir. I vouch for that.
As a concluding remark for all our participants from my side, I would just like to humbly remind everyone, look at the exchange rate today. It is now 75 rupees, which you may consider very good for export, but how about import? Because when we get a packaging machine, packaging material and machinery from abroad, and we pay ad valorem duties, it's a killer. So, in fact, the rupee is becoming weaker instead of becoming stronger.
So that's a sobering thought. So, Mr. Jindal, I mean, we have heard each other now. Like a lot of people are asking, and I think there are some investors who are asking this: is the FMCG food processing sector a good in business to invest in? What are the prospects of growth in this sector, Mr. Jindal?
Opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Bhattacharya.
Excuse me, Dr. Jindal, if you don't mind, I'll just add. Or would you like to speak?
No, please go ahead.
I was saying that, see, unless anybody with deep pockets and can invest in this food business on a very large scale like Coca-Cola, then the chances of success and growth, because they've got deep pockets. Look at what happened to Kellogg. After they started in India for years together, they kept losing money. Coke and Pepsi lost hundreds of crores, but they didn't give up. Can we sustain like that?
So, Mr. Jindal, I think, we've had two very different perspectives emerge out of this discussion. But if you advise to a potential investor, especially if it is an international investor, what would you say about India? What are the pluses about India? What are the really the attractive things about India? And what are the negatives, of course?
Mr. Bhattacharya, you are asking me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will say that whatever we were discussing so far is an in-house discussion. Okay. This is between a group of, industry colleagues. Who are working on the ground within the country, and they're trying to take things forward. So we talk to each other, we identify the difficulties, not for criticizing somebody or the government, or even if I say the bureaucratic system is still not well, is not to find a fault with somebody, but to identify where the improvement is required. Okay. Now, let's go a little beyond that. The question of attracting the investments or overseas companies or those 56 Japanese companies who are moving away from China and wanting to come to other Asian countries, we have to put our best foot forward. And for that, I am with all of the panelists, the essence which everyone has referred, particularly Mr. Girish Bajaj, that we have to improve, automate, and as he said, this is not an option, this is a necessity for us. Similarly, getting those investments in those companies to India is today our necessity. We have to see how to get them. And if I have highlighted six parameters, that these are the infrastructure or utility cost or working efficiency or our practicality of our regulations or our bureaucratic system. All these we have to work to move forward. To get them here, we have no other alternative, because then how do we support 135 or 150 crore population tomorrow? Right? And as everybody says, the word is saying, we are an emerging economy, and therefore we have to think in that perspective, that how soon we can be, one of the top 3 or top, whatever. So in that respect, I think I am very grateful and amazed, being day and day in touch with the entire food segment in the country, particularly the MSMEs, and some of them are 2nd generation, 3rd generation MSMEs. They worked hard. Their 1st generation started with a small room to themselves, right?
Right.
And they have brought things to national level brands or global brands.
Right.
So there are difficulties, but I am optimistic, and I think we will be able to work well. And yes, we must dialogue with the government. We should not shy down. And that's what Mr. Tajani knows, Dr. Tyagi knows, Mr. Nitin Sethji has not come here today, and Kalra Sahab knows. Girish ji, I and Mr. Girish has worked very closely for telling the government what should be the GST or excise duty requirements for equipment. How do we modernize? How do we make the equipment more?
Right. Hello.
I think he has a network issue.
I think again there's a network issue which has come up. This, of course, I feel that I mean, I see there's no ground for optimism. I mean, of course, there are hurdles, and I think India is a land of hurdles because we have to live with those. But at the end of the day, I also sense some optimism. And there are a lot of green shoots which look good from a distance. I mean, I'm sure being in the industry, you almost every day have something negative to come up against. But yet the fact that, say, Mr. Tejani, your children have also come into the industry, So obviously there must be something very good happening, otherwise they wouldn't have been in the industry, In fact, your company...
conclude with a joke where there was this business. Mr. Bajaj, you're already laughing. I didn't finish the start the joke. So,
sir, anything coming from you is obviously. Yeah, please.
Anyway, so like there was somebody saying having some business and he gave a mountain of problems like I just did. And then the fellow asked him, in that case, why are you still in this business? I want to see what happens next.
So if I may,
want to see what happens next.
Mr. Tejani sir, just to add to your knowledge, to your saying, I always maintain and I tell my kids also who are by the grace of God now almost ready to join me, is that business is and will never be for faint-hearted. Whether it is FMCG business or whether it is any business anywhere in the world, it is never for the faint-hearted. Yes, there will always be problems, and that is what makes business so interesting also. So if I can...
there are what you call business problems which are common all over the world. But we have got some added manufactured problems.
Sir, we are the lucky ones.
On that light, jolly note, I think I'd like to bring this discussion to an end. The fact that it has lasted for an hour and 41 minutes shows how dedicated you have been as panelists and how much you have contributed to our knowledge. Mr. Rakesh Kumar sir, can we bring the proceedings to a close? Do you have one last thought?
Please, you conclude. I think let there be a concluding remark from Dr. Jindal.
Yeah, Dr. Jindal.
Available?
Dr. Jindal, are you back?
I think he has lost the connection. He is out.
Yeah,
so one Q&A, Mr. Kalra, you have to answer live, I think you have mentioned.
I think by mistake I pressed that button. So the question was whether there will be an end to these, whether there will be a 6-month period when people will stop consuming immunity boosting products and all. So that was the question. If I'm allowed to answer, I can answer it.
Yes, you have mentioned, sir. Please.
Yeah.
So I don't think it will end here right now because every product that we pick up right now is fortified in some way or the other. You pick up mustard oil, we also had one. So it will say that it is fortified with vitamin A and vitamin D. And you pick up some, Chyawanprash, or you pick up some curd, probiotic, whatever. So immunity boosting thing is now more of a trend. People are no longer able to go to the gymnasiums and all. They cannot afford to play with their lives. They've learned a lesson the hard way. Somebody gets COVID at 30 years of age is also as susceptible to somebody getting it at 65 years of age. So people would want to be in a fighting fit state. And I think this trend is going to continue and get stronger.
Fantastic. No, I mean, we have seen how this haldi milk has become an international phenomenon. You know, so,
yeah. Yes.
Yes, Mr. Jindal, you know, we are very sorry. Your connection keeps getting disrupted. So we will now, with your words, we'll end today's proceedings.
I think I will say a couple of sentences, but then I will request Rakesh ji to really give in the parting word. I think only takes from today's discussion and otherwise also, Indian entrepreneur is very energetic. Okay, can sustain through difficulties and tough situations. It is the same as our soldiers fighting at the heights. Entrepreneur also does that. And we have now, over time, over generation, developed good network. Rakesh is doing something so wonderfully, okay, on the export exhibiting space. Girish is doing something very good. He's exporting equipment, right? Like that, we have everyone. You know, the kind of products which Mr. Tajani makes or which Mr. Tyagi makes in the world. And today, as rightly said by Mr. Kalra, that we have to look towards nutrition and immunity building products. India is home. We have the best treasure of nutrition in foods. So let's all together think of it and work for it. And I have always tried to keep in close touch with all the industry leaders. If I see Mr. Tajani's call in the morning, I know the Maharashtra government has done something wrong. You know, that close is our relationship, our interaction. Similarly, I have, interacting with Dr. Tyagi and, other people also. So let's work together. India has been with us all the time with the Ministry of Food Processing. We will work together and there will be different amount. With these words, I want to hand over Mr. Bhattacharya and Mr. Rakesh Kumar.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jindal. Thank you, panelists. We had a fantastic discussion. I wish we could have more of such discussions, but I'm sure in the run-up to the IHE 2020, we will meet a couple of more times, definitely. Thank you once again. Namaskar.
So nice.